Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Hi, everyone. This is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you to Smart Women Talk. Today, we're talking about this idea of purpose and living your purpose brilliantly. Our guest is going to be talking about finding your voice and doing that through identifying your superpowers. Our guest is Mary Beth Orr, and she is going to tell her story about how adversity, rejection, trauma, and extraordinary loss led her to her journey of empowerment, fulfillment, and vibrant art. I've known Mary Beth for years. She is a French horn player for the Grand Rapids Symphony. She has won all kinds of competitions. She's putting out an album right now that we'll talk about, but she's also one of the most brilliant women with wisdom way beyond her years. And she's such an inspiration that I'm so thrilled to have her. So we're going to talk about how to live your purpose by activating your superpowers, why there is no greater benefit to your creativity and fulfillment than being brave, vulnerable, and authentic. Wow, that gives me goosebumps. And how to balance drive and ambition while experiencing true joy. Because isn't that why we're all really here? Mary Beth, welcome to Smart Women Talk. I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, Katana, you know I love you. And I've been following your smart women because I want to be a smart woman for many years.
You are.
I'm trying, for sure.
I always think that there's something that happens in our life that leads us to our purpose. And I really do believe that adversity is part of that path. We go down into the rabbit hole, and sometimes we might do that many times in our life. But while we're down there, we are learning so much. We're gathering so much wisdom and knowledge. And that when we come out, that really is leading us to our purpose, and our job is to find the gift. So I know with you're just dealing with it absolutely beautifully, but you had adversity. And can you tell us a little, because I'm surprising you with this, but can you tell us a little bit about that journey that you've been on? Because you're still very young, but I said you're so wise for your age.
I did have a really great family and great upbringing and parents that really helped me find a very strong sense of self in a time where, you know, being a young girl and just things, I didn't have to grow up with social media, but I did very early on feel very self-conscious of my body, and I'm very self-conscious of myself. And music really, I feel, found me. So I almost don't feel like I can take credit for finding music. It pretty much latched onto me and wouldn't let go. However, as the partner of a musician, that doesn't mean that it's automatic success. That doesn't mean that, oh, I know that I'm good at music, so everything's going to be fine. That's not how it works. You have to sacrifice a great deal and decide how much you want that music to be a part of your life and in what way. I would say that what helped really make music a clear choice for me is the fact that I felt like I was stronger when I was doing music, meaning I didn't have self-esteem issues when I picked up an instrument. I did not question who I was when I was playing music. I was like, this makes me feel like I'm my most authentic. And that's something I'm going to talk a little bit about today, is having a strong sense of self without being a rampant narcissist, because those are very different. You really do have to have a strong sense of knowing yourself really well, and adversity will help you get to know yourself extremely well. So that having that experience really early on, where I didn't feel like I did have a strong sense of self, and music led me there. My parents helped lead me there, really prepared me for the adversity of having a music career and just other things that life has to offer. I was in an accident where I almost died. I have a challenging family situation where my mother's in late stage Alzheimer's, my sister has cerebral palsy, and I actually found out my dad was having a stroke as I was on my way down to Charleston, South Carolina to move them up to my home. I'm also pregnant, 9 months pregnant at 43. So I've had a lot of things in a very short amount of time that I've had to keep choosing a path through and forward and with everything going on. I don't think you really move past adversity necessarily, just learn how to incorporate it into what you're doing. Ultimately, strong sense of self would be probably the number one thing that has helped me stay on a path that I keep choosing good things. I keep choosing the things that feed me and choosing that musical and artistic path.
So the strong sense of self, I think that's really amazing that you were able to develop that, because one of the things that Mark says about you is you're fearless. Because so many musicians, they go on stage and everyone has to look powerful and competent and everything. But he talks about musicians and really famous people who throw up before they even walk out on stage, or really super shy people who open up and become this amazing person on stage. You have this strong sense of self, whether it's music and performing, but also when adversity comes, where so many people would crumble. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to mention the two things that you just talked about. I'd like to talk about both of them because our audience is a lot of midlife women, and you're one of the young people we're bringing in. And so you're dealing with this issue with your parents and having to move them to your home, add on to your house, right? Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk about this first because it's affecting so many people, whether they're helping parents or special needs family members, or even planning for their own. How in the heck did you have the strong sense of self? I wrote this down to think that you could even do this, that you could manage this and manage your career. And how did you navigate that whole system out there? Can you talk about that just briefly?
Yes, I had been wanting this to happen. I've been wanting to integrate my family into my life in Michigan for a very long time, actually, probably as early as 2010 when my husband and I got married, because for me, it was very clear. I'm the only sibling. There's nobody else. And I grew up, actually, that's really interesting. I didn't really make this connection until now. I really had a sense of being in a hurry in my career for most of my upbringing, because I knew from a very young age, just from being rational, just looking around me, I'm the only one. There isn't going to be anybody else that can pass the buck when it comes to what happens with my parents, with my sister. And I love them and fiercely love them. These are amazing people that deserve to be cared for. So it is an honor for me to do that. And I was always in a hurry to get into the life, get my life settled so that I can put these other plans into place. So I had been researching how Medicaid worked in Michigan and really trying to figure out that process, what I needed to do, the right doctors, all of these things. I've been, I think, really actively doing it for maybe 4 or 5 years before the move actually happened, because I had to present, because I think a lot of people are going to be struggling with this too. You can probably see the writing on the wall for your family. You're looking at them and saying, there's a tidal wave behind you. Turn around and look, and they won't do it. And it's making you crazy. I've been there, 100%. I've been there. And unfortunately, I also ended up having the worst case scenarios trying to prevent, meaning I wanted to move them up sooner while everybody was really healthy before the ish hit the fan, so to speak. And unfortunately, it was just a little bit too late. But it was honest conversations with my family. I actually even had to, as a good Southern girl, because I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, I have an incredible respect for my father. But I had to get in his face a little bit. And that was hard because I don't yell at my phone. but I had to. So there were, I would say, if I created like a pyramid of what needed to happen first and how I did what I did, first of all is setting, I needed to be the person gathering the information. If I'm going to convince them to do this thing, I need to find as much information as I can. I'm a Google queen. I went to every single government organization in Michigan. I was calling on the phone. I was crowdsourcing information from everybody I knew in Michigan. So I had scenarios A through probably Q of what options look like. Okay, how do we do this? When would it happen? And then then there were the emotional conversations of, Dad, you need to look around you. You can't keep wearing this cape and taking care of everybody. Mom's Alzheimer's is getting worse. I feel like the situation there was making her Alzheimer's worse. My sister's health was getting worse. And so then that's actually harder, I think, than finding all the information, is when you have to really convince your family to get on board with you and be a part of the solution, as opposed to just constantly presenting you with all the reasons it's not going to work. And I think you talked about superpower, because yeah, it did catch me off guard because I don't consider myself having superpowers. I like to stay in my vulnerability and authenticity a lot, which means, okay, I have this persona out on stage, but I don't want to be that rampant narcissist. So I want to, okay, don't drink my own Kool-Aid. But I would say that I am a solution-oriented person. So if you're continually bringing me with problems, I'm going to have a hard stop. And we're like, no, that's not what we're doing. You also have to be a part of the solution. It's not always telling you why something's not going to work. You contribute. If you're working with me on this, you need to contribute to also finding a solution, because this over here is not an option. Doing nothing is not an option. From there, it was, once I got him emotionally on board, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, and then we could really get into the nitty-gritty and the planning, which I'm really good at doing. And unfortunately, even with all of those best laid plans, I'm on my way to move him out. I'm actually at layover at Charlotte Airport. I had one overnight bag. I was planning to load them up in the car, start the drive to Michigan, and my sister's a quadriplegic, so we had to have two different vehicles because she has to be in her wheelchair, and it was going to be a hard trip to do 15-hour drive, like over 2 days, and her in her wheelchair in the van. But we were going to do it, and I find out my dad's having a stroke. My best friend from high school picked me up at the airport. I get it into the house, and nothing was packed. Nothing. There are dirty dishes in the sink. Like, not one thing had been cleaned out of the cabinets. None of my sister's medical supplies have been packed. No clothes, no nothing. They'd taken, and I'd arranged movers and packers, but my dad may have been having a low-grade stroke the entire time. So this is the thing. This is what happens. I made these plans, and the variables exploded in my face. And so in that moment, it is, you just do it. You just do what needs to be done.
Can I do something called nerves of steel?
I am a big believer that unless you are, because I do hold space for this, that sometimes we are in a chemical place where we are not able to make choices when mental illness is really at its peak, and chemically, sometimes the brain is not capable of making choices. That's a fact. Outside of that, though, I am a believer that I'm not just naturally strong or something. I choose it.
Wow.
I choose to not give up. I choose that the outcome that I want is a positive one, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can in my physical power to manifest that and make that happen. So it's like so it's strength, but it's force of will, but it's a choice. It's a decision. Mm-hmm. I choose to go after what, until there's not a breath left in my body. I'm going to choose to have happiness. I'm going to choose to try to create the best scenario possible rather than just hoping it happens, right? I'm going to exhaust everything that I have within me, and I'm going to ask for help too. This is a big deal. I asked for help. my sister-in-law was able to find the handicapped accessible housing for me and the family while we waited for my dad to get out of the hospital, because I had to handle the closing, or actually rescheduling the closing, because the lawyers and the buyers were going to be doing that by proxy the next morning. I crowdsourced family that came and were help pack things up, went back and forth to the hospital, cleaned up the house after it was done, took over the 24-hour care of my mom and my sister. And you just do what's in front of you at the time and accept help from everywhere and eat and go to the bathroom and rest when you can, because it won't last forever, even though it feels like it will. And you just keep your eye on what it is that needs to happen, what you want to happen, and you just keep moving in that direction, and you don't let the shadow back here take you out.
Your brilliance and all that research you did, you now have a whole team of people that are supporting you and coming and going and managing this, so you again can step into your brilliance and continue in your career and be a new mommy.
It's funny, I've actually done more in terms of the solo aspect of my career in the busiest, most intense, overwhelming parts of my life, which would probably be the last 3 or 4 years. I've done the most in that time. And I think part of it is because I have such a determination to not martyr myself or lose myself in the caregiving. I set boundaries. And part of that, again, is that sense of self. It's that, all right, I'm highly emotional, but I also, practically speaking, know that what is and isn't sustainable. And I'm like you, when the energy's spinning and working, it just keeps feeding me until I crash, because I will crash at some point. But I do feed off of both inertia. If I'm not doing anything and I get lazier and lazier, I stay in that cycle and I have to do something to break out of it. When the energy's spinning, I'm like, and I'm just going from one thing to the next and highly productive. I would say just knowing myself and knowing that there is an ebb and flow to all of it, that again, that sense of self and knowing myself well is knowing when to capitalize on that energy. And because I will say, yes, I did have hopeless moments. I'm a big believer that, especially with my accident and everything, that's why I wrote some blog entries about trauma and what it means to heal, because I think we have such a social media, movies, television, glossy type of culture where what we end up seeing of other people's experiences is what they want us to see. And I love to show people the things that nobody else might, like the ugly, dirty, messy stuff, because healing and adversity and getting through it is not a movie workout montage. It is really dirty. I absolutely, my husband was very worried about me, because anytime I called him while I was in Charleston, I just would bawl my eyes out. Absolutely. Anytime I got in my car and I was away from anyone, I was hopeless. I'm not going to lie. I was hopeless. Like this feeling that it was all too late. All of that work, all of that planning was still too late and all for nothing. But I just don't stay there.
So now I want to pull that rug out of your feet and put you back to that day. We got an email and it said Mary Beth had been in this car accident.
Right.
And my husband's a horn player and he knows how important the amateur, the face, the whole thing, being able to breathe, and something with your back on top of it. Can you talk to us about what happened and how long ago that was? And then how did you heal from that?
I was T-boned going through on a rural road, going through a stop sign. I literally went to bed the night before. This was May 5th of 2018. I went to bed on May 4th after having an amazing, we just did Marriage of Figaro in Grand Rapids with the opera. And I went out with a friend afterwards. It was a great night. I went to bed being like, I love my life. I had all these solo things booked for the summer. I felt like I was going. Everything was just really great. And I was very happy. And I was on my way the next morning to volunteer for a veterans equine therapy group. So I was going to a horse farm and I was going to groom horses and play with horses all morning. Can't get much better than that. But I went to bed the night before that and then woke up 3 days later in the hospital with someone pulling a catheter out of me. That's my first kind of waking up memory. And it's weird how quickly I accepted it, what people were telling me, but apparently I woke up 20 something times. But I was unconscious, legally unconscious for 3 days. I lost this tooth, cracked this one, bit entirely through my lower lip. I still have a pretty big scar here. I had glass everywhere, collapsed lung, bleeding spleen, lacerated liver and kidney, and a cracked C6 and C7 vertebra, like a closed transverse fracture inside the vertebra, and a very traumatic brain injury. So they didn't, and they, what's funny though, is my husband says I have documented medical evidence that I'm a fighter because I would not stop moving, even completely. And they said, we can't give her any more sedative to do this MRI because it would stop her heart. We can't give her any more, but I would not sit still. I was fighting the entire time. They had to have me strapped down. Of course, I have no memory of this. Nothing was going on in my pupils at all. Just that's my body's reaction. And scared the absolute hell out of all the people I love most, which is something actually I still carry with me. And it was just this really insane process of waking up, accepting what happened, and trying to give it. I write about this too in blog posts because it's something that we don't talk about when it comes to trauma and when we talk about injury. Not only am I trying to figure out how to get back what it is that I've lost, which is just with my personality, that's just number one. I'm like, oh hell no. Like I have an oh hell no button. And when my oh hell no button gets pushed, it's on. Warrior mode is on. I'm going to find a way to fix this. You're not going to tell me no. But I also, because there's so many people that loved me and that I loved incredibly fiercely, I had to balance that with what they needed as well. Because I had to accept that they watched me for 3 days, not knowing if I was going to wake up and not knowing if I woke up, if I would be mean. That's huge. I have to hold space for that. I'm sorry, but unless we want to be hermits living alone in the woods, if you want relationships with others and you want to experience love, give it and receive it, there are things you owe the people in your life. They're things that you owe them. And I owed them trying to rest. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at resting my hamster wheels going. But that process, I did have to confront the possibility of maybe there's nerve damage in my lip that will change everything, and I will never, no matter how incredible my force of will is, no matter how strong you are, sometimes the reality is this is gone. Now, what are you going to do? And I would say that is something that I never got to a place of in that time, of being okay with the alternative. So I have a huge respect for people that have had to truly accept the outcome that they wanted the least. Because I did not experience that in that accident. I managed to manifest with everything that I could utilize in my control, as messy as it was, because it wasn't clean, it wasn't pretty. I did some things I probably shouldn't have done. I probably didn't do things always in the smart way. I was trying to balance out my sanity and emotionally what I needed in terms of knowing that something is moving forward with maybe what was also healthy. I was always doing this, sometimes this, and really doing it as I went, because I didn't have, and I advocate this for people too, is finding your own. That's what, like we're talking about this, finding our own voice. I had to accept that there wasn't going to be a pathway that somebody else had done that I could follow. There wasn't, in getting back to playing and I looked up methods about when you had an injury, what should you do first to come back to playing? Because there's a part of me that wanted like a plan. I'll follow this plan and it'll be nice and clean. But just like in my artistic path, in terms of winning an audition, I tried to do other people's methods, winning an orchestra audition for years, didn't work. So I've had to accept this about myself, that my path is just not going to look like anybody else's, and I have to forge it myself. And now that I know that, I actually think there are quite a few things that are a lot easier. Just don't look for somebody else's path, because it's not going to be mine. Mine's going to be mine.
So how did you find your path during that time? Did you have to surrender and trust? Was there an intuitive thing?
There was a point where I did transition from a speech therapist, because when you have a traumatic brain injury, I didn't really need a ton of physical therapy. I had a chiropractor that helped with shoulder things and some things going on with pain issues there. And my neck healed incredibly fast. That is I can't accept any control for that. I heal very quickly in very witchy ways. But I transitioned from the speech therapist. We did brain games about like memory and trying to get those things back and understanding how my brain was different from this point on and how to strengthen it. And then she said to me, it seems like more of the issues that you're having are the trauma-based issues, the emotional-based issues of this accident, because chemically, I really wasn't feeling much, if that makes sense. And any of your listeners that have struggled with depression, or actually a friend of mine spoke to me about her experience with postpartum depression and how similar it was. You start to feel like you're a bit of a ghost, where you're intellectually aware of everything that's happening around you, even things that you know intellectually, I enjoy this. The flavor of this food is good, but you don't feel like you're actually a part of it. It's a very bizarre experience. I found myself not wanting to be around people because I knew that I couldn't match their emotional level with anything. And I didn't, even with facial expressions, or it felt like a lot of work. Let's put it this way. It felt like a lot of work to make them feel comfortable with the interaction, because I just couldn't fully be present or participate in it with the same level of emotion. So you feel like you're observing your life from the outside in. You're just watching things happen. And so my trauma therapist was really wonderful at helping me unpack that, peel the layers of that onion, and to embrace the really odd sensations I was having. Like when people would tell me how great I looked after the accident, I wanted to punch them in the face a little bit. And I'm like, whoa, I'm thinking, that's not, this person loves me, I love them. Why does that make me so angry? Or when just certain things people would say that would surprise me at how much I hated that they said that, how it didn't help or didn't feel good, and what do I do with that? And then also helping me realize that I also felt like I was wasting time. I kept saying to myself, I have all this time that I've always wanted. Why am I not working on writing a song, or working on an arrangement, or doing something even more creative? Because I also like to paint. I'm like, this would be perfect time for, this is when people, when they're going through traumas, when they're writing their best stuff. Not always. For me, all my mental energy was going to just holding space for this complete show I was dealing with, to be honest. It was all my energy.
So sometimes do we just have to surrender? That's my question. Just surrender, be quiet, and allow. And you have to allow yourself to heal and give yourself that time.
Release judgment, because I'm very achievement oriented. So for me, me and the trauma therapist, we really had to redefine what a good day looked like. Because for me, a good day has a ton of productivity to it. That wasn't going to be happening. For me, I found a lot of peace, and because it was in the summertime, I would have coffee in the morning, let my dogs out, and I would turn the sprinkler on, and I would just watch the sprinkler with my coffee. Same thing at dusk. Make a gin and tonic. Watch the sprinkler as I let the dogs out. It's like, and I did have to surrender and let go of what my previous perceptions of success and achievement and what a good day looked like were. And I had a very good friend, actually. She had come over and she was getting ready to go back to Chicago. And I said to her, I feel like I'm missing this golden opportunity to really be creating some amazing things from everything that's happening. And she goes, I said, with all this time off, and she goes, sweetie, this isn't time off. You're recovering. This isn't time off. You are seriously depleted in ways you can't even imagine. Slow your roll. Pretty much.
Long term, did it teach you some sense of balance and to really focus on self-care for yourself?
Yes, and understanding that true self-care also takes a lot of energy, right? If we're doing
planning and focus.
Yeah, you are devoting energy and resources to true kind of, there's surface self-care. Oh, I'm going to go get my nails done. Oh, this is a nice little thing I'm doing for myself. But sometimes for me, I'm like, actually, that self-care really would be a yoga session, like 1 hour concentrated yoga session, or making a really good, focusing on my nutrition, making a really good meal. There are deeper forms of self-care. And self-care actually takes willpower. And that's something a lot of people don't realize. And I use a lot of willpower all the time. So when you talk about balance, and when I talk about understanding myself as a yogi, like I've been teaching yoga for 20 years, I think, at this point. And what I love talking to students about is that when we get into a balancing posture, like balancing on one leg or anything that we're doing like that, where I see the judgment on my students' faces of like the wobbling, the shaking, maybe falling out of the pose. And I said, no, this is exactly what this pose is. Balance is not this. So this is not, balance is this constant, very active thing. And it requires acknowledgement and acceptance to make the adjustments to get it closer to here. And you might be here for maybe a millisecond and now it's going here. Do we want to avoid this? Yeah, that probably would be good. But at the same time, there are those of us, and I identify very much as a creative. And as a creative, I do have to accept that I need to capitalize on my energy and maybe a little bit of manicness when it's there. And also be able to know when to pull back from it before I hit the wall and put it in its place. So I'm able to, instead of going from here to here, I can find a way to go maybe from here sometimes, and then it'll be go back here. And then maybe I have times where I'm just like this and I'm doing damn good. But then but a trauma is going to happen. Life happens, right? And shoot, okay, how long am I going to be here? All right, and pull it back. So I think people just remembering that balance is a very active thing. It is not perfection. It is a living, breathing, active thing that requires constant adjustment all the time. And when you accept that, there's less judgment on yourself, and then you're more free to observe in a more authentic, accurate way, I think.
So, Mary Beth, we've got to wrap. The time has flown by. I know our listeners and watchers, those on YouTube, are going to want to connect with you. And I was just shocked when I went to your YouTube, because not only were you playing horn, but then you would sing. You have this gorgeous voice, and you would play piano, and then you would coordinate it all together and put it all into one piece. For those who want to connect with you, they're going to be able to see this and see a lot of the different things you've done. But you also are putting out an album. Can you just share with everyone how they can connect with you and about the album that you're doing?
My website is very easy. It's just my name.org, marybethorr.org. It's also very easy to look me up on all the socials. So you can just search Mary Beth Orr to find me on Facebook. I'm very active on my professional page. Instagram is Mary B. Orr third horn, since I'm third horn with the Grand Rapids Symphony. And yes, my YouTube, again, you can just do a search for Mary Beth Orr horn. And this album is it is the creative apex of who I am. And it wraps up everything that I am and being brave enough to show every single side of me. And it was a long road to get there, but I am a folk singer. I am a pianist. I am a horn player. I am a creative and an artist. And all I want to do is connect and make art that makes people feel comfortable to be their own best self, authentic, and also vulnerable.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, love you. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this really interesting conversation today. And if you want to connect with us, visit Join Smart Women. And until our next show, go out and live with more purpose, more passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.